Looks like we're live. Allow me to go ahead and share the info. I hope everyone's doing alright. Hope everyone's just nice and relaxed. I definitely am. Got my cup of coffee with my awesome Critical Role mug, because it's great. And today, we are working on a secret project. As you may have already seen from the title, our project today will be consisting of, well, something you guys can't necessarily see because I'm working on it in private, so to say. I mean, I call it a secret book, but I've already published it online in various places, which you can totally read it at if you want. Actually, you know what? I may include a Nightbot command for reading the first chapter of the book. Let's do that. Alright, and then let me go ahead and pull up the website. Alright. Oh yeah, today's the 5th anniversary. Man, that's awesome. And I love that Jared's drumming to it again. That's so cool. Alright, let me test the command. Okay, cool. So let me go ahead and add that to our Nightbot command list. Alright, that should be good for now. I love Nightbot. I just started figuring out how to use it, and it's fantastic. I've got both water and coffee, so I am set. I should also include what we're listening to. Let me go ahead and get that up. Oh, that melody is familiar. Alright, let's put it... down here should be okay. And then I will just move the donation bar over here. Then let's get the music right there. Oh, it needs an underline desperately. Or outline. That's the word I meant. Let's go ahead and fix that then. Set the outline color to black. There we go. That's more legible. Oh yeah, and then with that being the case, I think I'll move the chat over so it doesn't overlap with that. Alright, let's move chat up there, and then we'll move our... the alerts in the chat can have a bit of overlap, that's fine. I'm loving the music. I also put some rainy mood on in the background because I'm hoping for some rain here on the West Coast. We need it, that's for sure. Hello, Mezzo9. I hope you're doing alright. Welcome to the stream. We're just relaxing and hanging out in it for right now. You like to call rain writing weather? Absolutely. That's why I love rain so much. I am writing as we speak. I say that with air quotes because I'm mostly just listening to the music and staring at my page while I write nothing. Right? The struggle. It's so rewarding when you actually get writing done, though. Like 2 nights ago, I wrote like 9 pages in my book. I was on a crazy roll. And then all of a sudden, the momentum stopped. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, hey, words aren't hard. Just do the thing. But my brain, of course, is like, I don't know what to do. 1 hour of staring might just lead to getting a sentence or two down. True. Words are hard. Accurate. I don't mind. I get stuck all the time. This is honestly a book that I never intended to write, but I just sort of started, because for the past couple years, I've had some difficulty getting used to just getting used to life, I suppose. And after that, life just kept kind of spiraling into craziness. And eventually I just kind of stopped finding inspiration for writing. I wrote this behemoth of a book, and I published that last year. And this book took me 2 years to write. Normally it only takes me like a few months, but I think this book was the transition period between how I wrote as a kid and how I write now as an adult. Because I was 19 when I started writing this, and I was 21 when I finished. And wait, no, I was 22 when I finished, because I'm 23 now. Numbers are hard. But yeah, just that. And people love that book, but I just haven't really gotten back into the flow. That's the third book in a series, and I tried writing the fourth one, and I got about 160 pages in before I was like, I don't really know if I like this. So finishing is a big deal, getting it out there even more so. Absolutely. It's a fun process that I've just come to enjoy over the years. But it's just a matter of actually getting the words on the page that I think is my biggest problem. Oh, that notification always makes me jump, but thanks for the follow, Nez. That's awesome. But yeah, it's definitely a thing for authors to just have difficulty actually getting the words on the page. You may know the story, you may know how you want it to end and everything, but figuring out how to actually put that to words is probably the difficult part. I mean, I'm not super far into this book, but I'm not stuck on the beginning either. We're on chapter 2 now. We are... how many pages into... that one? Okay, we're almost 5 pages into chapter 2, so it's not too bad. But yeah, it was just... so the whole reason I'm writing this book is because I got stuck figuring out what I wanted to do. And I read somewhere that a good idea to kind of get your creative juices flowing again is to... oh, gotta get the start going at least. Absolutely. Like, the advice I heard was to essentially just free write completely. Don't even care about, like, any of the little things, any mistakes you make on the way. Just write whatever you want. And for some reason, for me, that meant writing a comedic sci-fi book. Normally, I write fantasy novels, or like modern fantasy novels and things like that. I've never really written sci-fi, but I've been reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I recently finished Joe Zija's Mechanical Failure, which is inspired by Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I guess I just had comedic sci-fi on the brain. Discovery method can be liberating. It absolutely is, because I just wrote this book and I just started writing, like I just let my fingers do the talking and I just kind of shut my brain off. And I'm like, wow, I actually have a story here. Because after this, I was actually freaking shower thoughts, of course. I was taking a shower earlier and I was thinking about this book. And I started getting very introspective and I'm like, you know, even though this is a comedic sci-fi novel, it can be so much more, because with sci-fi you can cover a huge variety of topics and like philosophical concepts. And I thought about that and I'm like, you know what? While I will try to keep it like a comedic book, I will absolutely consider like the introspective elements and kind of keeping the novel like a like balancing comedy between thinking about like existence, the universe, things like that. Things beyond just humanity, I suppose. Because the whole book takes place in outer space. Like, the main character, even though the book is secret, quote-unquote, you can still read the first chapter online if you want to, but the main character, well, there's some real depth in Hitchhiker's Galaxy, and that is exactly... it's like... isn't that what satire is? It's like, it's comedic, but there's a point to it. So it's like it's telling you a message. And that's the idea behind it. I guess for me, I just didn't originally intend that. I originally intended this to just be a complete free write book with absolute just nonsense, but the more I wrote it, the more it started unintentionally making sense, and I'm like, ooh, that works. I like that.
What the fuck?
Arter Queen of the Stone Age, thank you for the follow. Hope you're enjoying the nice rainy vibes as we just talk author crap. Whoops. That coffee went down the wrong pipe. Excuse me. It is crazy how a story can just fall together, right? And that's how it was when I was a kid, too. That's what got me into writing. I reached a point in my stories where just everything seemed to fall into place by themselves. I never wrote any outlines. I would just free write because that's all I had time for. Oh, I love the Persona 5 poster in the background. Yeah. It's like the cover of the original game. Geez, still choking from that coffee. But yeah, just as a kid, I've always loved writing, and it was actually video games that sparked my love of writing because I loved the story-driven games, but I only had a limited amount of time to play video games, so when I wasn't allowed to, I would go and write my own books because not only did I love those stories, but it was like a means for me to play video games in my mind, more or less. That's how I thought of writing as a kid. And eventually it just grew into this full thing. I don't do it full time yet because I make such little money off of sales, and like the only people who buy the books are like close friends of mine, which I absolutely love and appreciate, because just knowing that people read my stuff is like, wow. It's like, yeah, they're my friends, but it's like they actually enjoy it. It's like, that's an eye-opener. It's cool. I'm very appreciative of just friends and family and everything. But I was saying something and I completely lost my track of thought. Oh yeah, just my love for writing. I just appreciate it, and I just appreciate literacy. Like, I'm finally almost done reading the first A Song of Ice and Fire book, which is like what the show Game of Thrones was based after. I'm finally almost done reading the first book. It took me way too long because I kept putting it off, but man, that book is so good. Wish my friends and family would read anything, doesn't have to be my stuff. I feel that. My family doesn't really read much. Like, my parents kind of take my books more as like a show-off thing. They're like, oh hey, look, our kid's a published author, though they never like read any of it. But not like, a lot of my friends are former co-workers and the like, who I told them I was writing a book, and they're like, oh dude, we want to read that, so I'd like send it to them via Google Docs or something, and they're like, dude, why are you not like actually publishing them? Because I've been self-publishing for years through Amazon's Kindle Direct Publishing, or before it was that, it was CreateSpace, and that's what I went through initially. And then they merged with Amazon KDP, and that's what this behemoth was published by. But yeah, just I'm definitely grateful for the few readers that I do have, because it's like, it's cool to see how your stories appear in other people's minds. Like, two of my best friends have been fans of the series I'm currently writing for years, and it's interesting to see their perspective on the books. Like, and it always makes me happy to see them make dumb memes out of the series, because it's like, yeah, I can see that. Man. Being an author can be tiring sometimes, but it is absolutely worth it. Friends love to hear me talk about it, but none of them read. Of course. That's the struggle, though, isn't it? A lot of people, like... A lot of people find it difficult to actually read. Like, or just find time to read, because they, like... I don't know. I don't know if maybe it's school that puts an inherent hatred or maybe fear of reading into students, because they feel like, oh, it's required, I don't want to do it. I don't know what it is, but even I, as an author, like, it took me a while to actually want to start reading, because growing up, I know I didn't really like reading because of school, and I wrote way more than I read. And then once I hit my 20s, I was finally like, ooh, reading's great. That being said, I made a ton of writer friends this year, and they all read, but they will also be able to see the problems. That's just par for the course. I know I make plenty of issues with my books. My friends call me out on it all the time when they read it, because I've never read my own writing, which is a very bad thing, because you need to have some sort of point of reference. So I write a book, and then I publish it, and I'm like, okay, done with that book, let's move on. But then a friend of mine will come up to me and say, hey, you know these two things in the story didn't align, right? You just started reading for real when you were 10 to 12, and when you found the Percy Jackson series is a great jumping off point, like especially when you're that age. I feel like that's the perfect age to read the Percy Jackson series. I think I was around that age when I was definitely like, I think I was 12 to 13 when I read the first one. It's so good. I need to read the rest of the series. Like, I read the main Percy Jackson series, and then I started reading the Lost Hero series, or the Lost Hero, like the first book, and the Heroes of Olympus is the name of the series, right? Like, it's the second one. I started reading it, but then I never finished it. And then I started listening to an audiobook of The Trials of Apollo, I think it is, because my boy Robbie Damon narrated it, and he's the voice of Akechi from Persona 5. And I loved him, and I'm like, ooh, he narrated a freaking Percy Jackson book? I gotta listen to that. And even though it takes place after the series I haven't written, I was still able to get an idea of what it was all about. Just through context clues. I've always been good about that, where I could watch a show right in the middle, and after about like 15 minutes or something, I'll start picking up on what's been happening, even without the context having been previously given to me. I don't know, maybe it's just like a storyteller thing. One of your favorite... He is a great author and I love him. I'm definitely looking forward to reading more of his stuff. He's a good storyteller and he writes characters very well. That's one of my favorite things about storytelling. It's seeing how human characters can be, even if they're not actually like human in a biological sense. Because in a way we all mostly brought up on Terry Pratchett. Yeah, that's understandable. I didn't really grow up reading a whole lot. The ones I mostly read growing up were Tolkien's work, like Lord of the Rings and everything, because my dad loved those books. And I don't really know. I didn't really have a favorite author as a kid, but then once I started growing up... Okay, I get you. Neil Gaiman was one that I grew quite fond of growing up. Neverwhere is one of my favorite books of all time. I love his writing style so much. Yeah, he is great. I need to read more of his works. Because I haven't read a whole lot of it, but I just definitely grew fond of his writing style. Right? It's fantastic. Wasn't there like a TV adaptation of it that was vastly inferior compared to the book? I never saw it, but I remember seeing screenshots of it. And I know that Gaiman mentioned that like a lot of the stuff they couldn't put in the show, he put in the book itself. Can never bring any specific works of his mind except Good Omens. That's another one I need to read. I've seen about half of the actual show, but I haven't gotten to read the book yet. I really do want to read it, though, because from what I've seen of the actual show, it's fantastic. Yeah, that's what I heard. Cause like yeah, I heard about that. Cause like I know that Neil Gaiman was like a co-author in that one. And yeah, with the Neverwhere adaptation, I remember I think in Neverwhere, like the book, he had that story at the beginning. It was like the introduction, and he was talking about how like whenever they couldn't put something in there, he's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll just put that in the book." And I guess like he made the director really angry about that or something. But man, I love the book. I haven't even seen, like, other than those screenshots, I've seen nothing of the adaptation. But, well, I guess you can't really call it an adaptation when the show came first, but still. I haven't seen anything from the show, I guess I should say. I absolutely love the book, though. Marquis de Carabas is one of my favorite characters. I love him. Hey, I'm actually getting writing done. Yes! I didn't read that at first, but because I read the book, and then I think I meant to read how the Marquis got his coat back, but I just didn't have time, because I was in a musical at the time, and I was reading the book in the middle of, or like, during breaks on our rehearsals. And I meant to read that short story, but I never got to it. So when I got the Neverwhere audiobook, which Neil Gaiman narrated and is fantastic, I finally got to listen to how the Marquis got his coat back, and that was so good. You mentioned that you were working on sci-fi. Is that your usual genre? Yes and no, I suppose. Generally, my stuff is more categorized as fantasy, but, like, for the most part, fantasy and sci-fi go hand in hand. Because, a lot of my writing, it's like it's more like modern fantasy, kind of like the Percy Jackson series. It's like it's got the magical elements of fantasy, but it takes place in a more contemporary setting. But this is just completely outrageous, and it's just like, hey, he's a con man who used to live on this planet, who was eventually plucked out and just thrown into space, and now he's inside the belly of a giant space piranha. Oh yeah. I have the first chapter posted online. Basically, it's all just a, I also don't really write in first person. I usually write in third person because in my books, I like to swap perspectives a lot. So, I mean, you can do that in first person. What is the work that you are most proud of? Probably this big guy. It's, like I said, it's the third book in a series, but this book, not only do I think it's my, yeah, I'm not a fan of first person either, but for this book, like, in particular, like I said, I was literally just writing this, like, the words were just coming out of my brain, and I wanted to get them down, and I'm like, alright, you know what, fine. It's first person, let's go. And I'm like, you know what, yeah, it's alright. But yeah, generally, like, with this book, the main group alone consists of, like, 11 characters or something, so it switches perspectives a lot, so it is in third person. But I think the reason I'm most proud of this one is because, like I said, this is the longest it took me to write a book, because it only takes me a couple months normally, but this one took 2 years, and my life changed a lot during the duration of this book, and it's like a reminder of how I was when I started writing the book, as opposed to how I am now, or when I finished. It's like, it's almost like a means to measure my life in a way. Because when I started that book, I was still kind of fresh out of high school. Kind of. And I just wasn't used to life yet. Then in the middle of that book, my grandma passed away. So there's like this section in the book that you can tell I was going through like the grieving process, because the main character loses his mother and ends up going through the same grieving process I was feeling. And then in the end, he comes out victorious anyway, regardless of all the losses. And like looking back on it, I'm like, all right, yeah, that's kind of how my life has felt. It's like I got over my grandma passing away, and my life's a lot better. And yeah, I prefer third person when you're writing, but first person's fine too, though you need to be... Oh, absolutely. Writing in first person is tricky to do well, because it's very easy to get things repetitive, like starting every sentence with I or something. Yeah, exactly, read too much amateur first person. That's totally understandable. But, like, yeah, like, I normally write in third person, because, like I said, it just gets too complicated if I were to even attempt to write it in first person, but for this sci-fi book, I'm literally writing it with the mindset of, alright, put your biases away, literally just write whatever comes to mind, and it's all coming into place for some reason. If you guys are interested, I can even read the first chapter once I'm finally done with chapter 2. I'm sure we'll still have time. We haven't been streaming for super long. Okay, that doesn't make sense. I usually don't like self-editing when I'm writing, because then it holds me back, but sometimes you see something that you really don't like, and it's like, okay, I have to fix that, like, right now. Yeah, putting down what comes to mind. Exactly. Because sometimes that's what you need to do. I know that, for me, it's really easy to get caught up in my head, and I think way too much about everything. So this is a good way to stop doing that, and to just let the book itself do the talking, while your brain kind of sits back and rests for a little bit. As pantsing it, yeah. Pantsing it's the phrase that I've heard the most. Because that's usually how I write most of my books, but as I've grown up, I started getting more caught in my head, and that's what's been preventing me from writing the way I used to. I like the discovery method, though. It makes it sound way cooler. The most annoying thing for me is that I imagine myself more visually rather than in words. That's how I used to be for a lot of my writing. Like I mentioned earlier, video games were the reason that I started writing. So, growing up, and basically up until I was 19, or even 20, I think, I would write envisioning my books like a video game, or like cutscenes in a video game, and that would help me get the words out better. I'd kind of like pause the scene in my head and figure out exactly how to describe like the action going on. And then that generally generated pretty decent results. But then, for some reason, once I grew up, I stopped thinking of my books that way, and while the quality improved, my ability to actually get it done in a timely manner is made it difficult. Gonna make dinner. Alright, awesome. We'll probably still be here, because I plan on streaming for a while today. Yeah, totally. Yeah, so Miz, what kind of books do you write? Or, like, generally, I suppose. Mostly best fits under fantasy. That's understandable. Fantasy is a very fun genre to write in, because like sci-fi, you can generally do just about anything you want and come up with your own logic for the stories. That's an issue of mine, though. I often don't find the best logic. Like with the Black Crystal book series I've been writing, there were some things that I never really explained, and one of my best friends, who has a very logical thinking brain, he's like, this doesn't make sense because of this and this. And for the longest time, my excuse was, well, it's fantasy, it doesn't have to make sense. But of course it has to. That was just my excuse for being lazy. Got a big world, a bunch of different stories to write in it, but a lot of blurs that non-existent line between... Exactly. And I know that with a lot of the video games I enjoy playing, a lot of them cross the two genres over. Like the game Xenoblade Chronicles, for example. It starts out with this big high fantasy-like world, where it's like these humans live on the body of this giant titan, and it's like this natural world. There's magic and swords, so people will call it fantasy. Exactly. And in Xenoblade, they go through this story or whatever, and they end up, like, the enemies are essentially these robots from another titan, but that titan, instead of being biological and having natural life, is all mechanical. And it's like the game is literally a clash between fantasy and sci-fi, because the humans in this fantasy-like world are in a war with these robots of this more mechanical world. And then you find out some of the robots aren't evil, and then the humans are, you know, it gets all complicated. But that's the idea. Fantasy and sci-fi do share many similarities, and then you throw magic and swords in it, it's gonna be fantasy. And then you've got, like, I don't know, beam swords and laser cannons, and it's gonna be sci-fi. But then my books include both, so it's like... I guess it could be considered more fantasy, because the guns in the Black Crystal series are like, they're more like guns from the 1700s, 1800s. They're not like gigantic missile launchers or anything like that. Most people use swords and bows and stuff like that. You have a beam sword already, the laser cannon comes later. I love it. Do you have any, works published online at all or anything? If you do, you can totally post the link in chat. I'd love to check some out later. I understand that. It's easy to be picky about your own writing. But also it's important to remember that as authors, we are our own worst critics. Like, that book I showed you, like, I actually hated it when I first published it. I couldn't stand it. Like, once I got it out, I was like, oh, I'm so done with this series. But then my friends read it and they're like, dude, this is freaking awesome. And I'm like, really? I thought it was terrible. It's like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Planning to do a rework of book 1 of the trilogy soon. I was saying for years I was going to rewrite it if I ever quit my job. My last day is this Friday. That's totally understandable. You totally should then. Like, if you feel like maybe you're just finally in the right mindset to get it done, absolutely do so. Writing is quite an undertaking, but it is very worth it in the end. Yeah, definitely keep me posted on the book as well. I definitely like to hear more about it. Awesome. No worries. Aiming for Discworld style series structure. That's understandable. Current books on the same continuity but totally separate stories. Oh yeah, that's a very... It's a very complicated way to write things, but it is fun. That's kind of how this book is, or the thick one I keep showing. It's not quite that, but like a certain thing happened in book 2 of the series where there was a big time skip between chapter 19 and chapter 20 at the end of book 2, and book 3 and the first half of book 4 explain what happened during that time skip, and then the second half of book 4 is finally what happens after. So it's like it's not quite all out, that format, but it very much does kind of explain things in an odd way. Hoping I will be able to make a bunch of jumping on points so people don't have to read a whole 48 book series, or so my plans say. That's understandable. But I mean, also, hey, if your series calls for being 48 books long, then go for it. I mean, there's this one author, his name is completely escaping my mind, but he has this really long series, like a really long fantasy series. I think it's called the Sword of Truth series, and like the books themselves are very extensive, and there are way more books in the series than I expected there to be. But you know, sometimes if the story calls for it, the story calls for it. Like, with this sci-fi comedy book I'm writing, I planned for it to be a completely standalone book, But then I started thinking about the plot more and thought, okay, maybe I could split it into a trilogy. And then once I started thinking about it again today, and I thought about how introspective the plot could get, Terry Goodkind, okay, that's him, yeah. Yeah, that's the guy. But, I thought of the plot, and I'm like, okay, this is probably going to be way longer than trilogy. But this is actually... I won't really write a whole lot yet. I'm going to end the book as if it was its own standalone book, because my plan with this is that if this book really becomes as good as or if it comes out as good as I'm thinking it is, because I'm enjoying it so much, I'm going to make sure it's properly edited, and I'm actually going to submit it to numerous publishers and see if anyone wants to take it on. And then if it ends up gaining traction, I will go ahead and start turning it into a series and writing more books in the series. But just in case it doesn't pick up, I will make sure the ending feels nice and conclusive so it doesn't end on a cliffhanger or anything. But I will likely write the sequels just for fun though, because I love the concept. Self-published or traditional? It's all self-published through Amazon. So initially there was a company called CreateSpace that I used to publish my books through, but a couple years ago they ended up merging with Amazon, and so I go through a publisher called Kindle Direct Publishing, which is like a direct Amazon company, and that's where I self-publish my books. They basically make it to where you can get your books ready for Kindle, but you can also publish physical copies if you want as well. So that's what I go through. But this sci-fi book, I'm hoping to make it like publisher ready so I can submit it the like more traditional way that people get books published. Yeah. Self-publishing is a very interesting process, I suppose I could say. I don't know, it's not super fun, but I mean, hey, it gets the book on print, and that's always a satisfying thing to do. Easier with a few books behind you. Oh yeah, I'm sure. Thanks. I have definitely heard that it's quite difficult, so I'm just gonna see how many publishers I can submit this to, and just not put all my eggs in one basket, essentially. Because I've definitely heard how difficult it is to actually get a book off the ground that way. I'll definitely be persistent about it, though. Because one of these days I want at least one book. Have I got an editor? Not a professional editor. Like, some friends sometimes offer to edit because they're very good at finding mistakes that I completely gloss over. But a lot of the time, they're like just too busy to really read through a whole book. And like I said, it's not like they're just friends of mine. They're not like professional. So like that's why before I actually submit this, I will kind of see if I can get like a professional editor looking at it. Once I can afford it anyway, because I'm flat broke right now, so I can't afford crap. But, you know, whatever. Yeah. Because goodness knows I make plenty of writing mistakes. Like, I'm fully aware of my grammatical uses and everything, and like, if I can catch a grammatical error, I will fix that, like, as soon as I can, but when you're writing and you start getting into a groove, it's easy to gloss over it and just completely miss it. That's also an issue when you're editing your own work, because when I'm reading my own work, I still gloss over very obvious mistakes that aren't so obvious to me because I wrote them. So my brain is just like, okay, no, that's perfectly fine. And then I go back and read it when it's already on print. It's like, oh shoot, that was a big mistake. If a publisher likes it, they'll probably put you in touch with an editor if it's needed. Okay, cool. So I'll probably just self-edit before submitting it to a publisher then. Just make sure everything's as well written as it can be, at least. We're still in the first draft stage, and it's only chapter 2, so we've got a long way before then. But still, I do kind of like thinking ahead. I've got so many writing hours under my belt, though. I've been doing it since I was 6 years old, so I've been at it for a while. I think it was a GRM interview I was watching where he said something like, you can check a dozen times, hire 100 editors and 1,000 beta readers. When it comes out in print, you will still find at least 3 mistakes. Oh, absolutely. I find typos in officially published books all the time. It really is just like it's a human thing. It's like, when it comes to writing in text form, it's always, especially like if it's a longer book, you will always find some sort of mistake in it, especially once it's already on print, because it's like, that's just, we're all human. We're not like robots. We can't auto-detect all those mistakes. Like, unless you're analyzing every single word, like one by one, and making sure everything fits perfectly, there are always probably going to be some sort of mistake, or there will always be some sort of mistake, I don't know. I can grammar well when writing, but apparently not when speaking. Most readers won't notice anyway. Exactly. Unless you're actively looking for it, your brain just sees, your brain fills in the gaps. Like, if you have 2 letters flip-flopped, your brain's gonna automatically pick up the word it was supposed to be in the first place, and you won't even care. I'm gonna go in a minute. Before I go, would you be interested in meeting other authors that use Twitch? Oh, totally. I'm always up for, like, meeting new authors and just, like, talking and everything, because I love talking to other authors. Alright, welcome back, Otter Queen. A group of us have been building a community Discord. Oh, that's awesome! If you have a link to it, I would totally be interested in giving it a look. Oh yeah, of course, go ahead. We don't have any rules saying you can't post links or anything. Oh, apparently we don't. Apparently we do. Of course, Nightbot. Come on, man. I thought it would be fine. Here, let me go ahead and see if we can fix that. Alright. Go ahead and, yeah, go ahead and try one more time. I went ahead and changed this Nightbot setting, so hopefully it doesn't disable it. Freaking, alright, there we go. Thank you for posting it. Yeah, Nightbot did it. The default setting has it to where it deletes messages if someone posts a link. I went ahead and changed that though, so hopefully that shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, thanks for posting that. I'll definitely be giving that server more of a look, probably once the stream's over, since I still will be focusing on getting writing done. Wow. You guys have built up quite a community. That's awesome. Definitely looking forward to giving that a look. Because authors are awesome. And I'm always up for meeting authors as well. It is a very distinct username, that's for sure. I like it. Etrian Odyssey, I love that series. I mean, I've only played one game, so I can't really say that, but still. Right? Well, it's because it's one of those, it's an Atlas game, and Atlas games are usually overshadowed by Persona, so it's like, yeah. I have the remake, I have the Millennial Girl, so it's like the remake of the first game, but like with an added story mode, and I love it. I'm so terrible at some of the puzzles, though. My goodness. There's this one room with 3 FOEs I could never get past, just because it's like... I don't know. It's been a couple years since I attempted it, though. I may eventually revisit it, but my 3DS is dead most of the time, so I don't play it very much. Meaning to play the Persona games for a long time, always loved Atlas games. Man, Atlas games have amazing writing. I love it so much. Okay, nice. On all the games, -3. Oh, yeah. I mean, I would highly recommend the Persona games, and I would also highly recommend the Shin Megami Tensei series, unless you've already played them. Because Shin Megami Tensei and Persona share plenty of similarities. Didn't like the Persona 5 writing. That's understandable. I hear that the localization in Persona 5 was actually kind of rushed. And it kind of led to things not properly going through in translation. I think, not Persona games, but Etrian Odyssey. Oh, yeah. Oh, actually, here, I'll post the title in chat so you can see how exactly it's spelled. Shin Megami Tensei. It's a very fun series. Very difficult. It's a very hardcore RPG series, but they're very good. Yeah, SMT for short. The script, yeah, exactly. I totally understand what you mean. I think writing-wise, like, when it comes to the actual script, my favorite is probably Persona 2. Both games, both Innocent Sin and Eternal Punishment. My favorite game in the series is Persona 4 for many reasons, but still. I love the writing style in the Persona 2 games. Yeah, I can't remember 3, but definitely... Okay, yeah. Can't decide if I want coffee or just... Oh my goodness, that's such a struggle. That's what... I went through that same struggle last night at like 10 p.m. Because I try to have just 2 cups of coffee a day, never more than that. And both, yes, drink coffee and then suffer as you try to sleep. But I went through the same problem, and I was like, man, I haven't had a second cup of coffee today, but it's like 10 p.m. Mood, very much so. I made sure to grab some coffee before starting the stream. Suppose a bit of coffee will help me read in bed. Yeah, true. And I mean, sometimes, if you're super used to coffee, you can still go to sleep with it in your system. I've done it. Sometimes the sleep you get when you drink coffee isn't always super good, but sleep is sleep. Working through Wheel of Time. I was warned. Fair enough. How do you manage to continue writing even when you see that significant drop of quality in the text? It's just a matter of getting through it, honestly. Because it's like, anything that's wrong, you can fix it at a later time. That's how I always see it. Because it's very important to just kind of get through the story. Coffee. Coffee for life, my friends. And water, because you can't forget to hydrate. Ah, that looks like a bot. Let's go ahead and delete that. And coffee is how you... Oh, yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure what you meant there, but yeah, you're exactly right. Coffee is how you continue writing. Or if you're not a coffee fan, tea, perhaps. Coffee is definitely what keeps me writing. It's overrated. I definitely enjoy it myself, though. Oh, same here. I started drinking it when I was 14, and I've since been hooked. Stream started. Oh, yeah. It's dropping frames. My internet has been terrible lately. Oh, yeah. Go ahead and get some rest for sure. I'll probably be doing more of these streams, like, hopefully around the same time throughout the week. Yeah, it's internet problems. It's dropping frames like crazy. It should hopefully chill soon. Let's see if I can do some things to alleviate it. Oh yeah. I think I just go with OBS's general options or settings. So yeah. Let's see now. I see. Alright, I'll go ahead and reset the stream real quick.